All right. So first of all, this talk is enhancing team synergy using Agile excellence. I've heard feedback that that's a really confusing title. I asked ChatGPT what to call it, so if you don't like it, we can blame AI. Right here is the description of this talk. If this is the talk you were planning on being in, thank you all for being here. If this is the wrong talk and you picked the wrong room, thank you for being here. It looks like you're stuck with us now. So first, before I even jump into any of the introduction, tell you what I'm going to talk about, tell you about myself, I would like a show of hands in this room of people who consider themselves an Agilist. Okay, we got a few in here. All right, so the reason I ask that is because I want to know how many people I have on my side and how many people in here I have to convince to come to my side. It helps me kind of gauge interest and see what's going on. So for the rest of you who said you are not an Agilist or don't define yourself as an Agilist, how many of you are using Agile tools or Agile processes on a day-to-day at work? Okay, a little bit more. So even if you're not an Agilist, you're probably still utilizing some of those tools. And then for my final question, how many of you in here truly think that Agile is dead, it is a waste of time, we are not doing it correctly, it's just taking up space in my brain? Ooh, nobody. Okay, that's very good to hear. Okay, so I'll start off light. My name is Amanda. This is me. Oh, too many. Here we go. I work at NetJets. So NetJets is a private aviation company. I've been there for almost a year now. I'm a senior Agile delivery lead. I am, for those of you that don't know, I am the co-president for Get With It. So Get With It is a nonprofit. We specialize in supporting and encouraging women in technology. Our yearly conference is our bread and butter. It's coming up in October, but we are starting to do more events throughout the year. But we encourage everybody to come, women and men. We want to make sure that everyone is welcome and supported, but we are making note of the women who are spending their time in IT and helping them to find the right space. Another group I recently joined, I've put this on here newly, we actually just celebrated 1 year together, is Gahanna Glow. It's kind of local to here. Gahanna's not too far, but it is actually a giving circle. So the idea of a giving circle is when you bring more people together, you can actually donate a bigger amount of money or funds or help. And so what we do each quarter is we have nonprofits come. We allow 3 of them to stand up in front of the group. They get 2 minutes to talk about their nonprofit, and then we vote on which one we think deserves the funds. At the end of the session, at the end of the hour that we're together, we all vote on who our top pick is. We announce it right then, and they get a check. So right now, we're up to 170 members, I believe. So we all donate $100. And then we have a couple other nonprofits who work with us and match our donation. So nonprofits are walking out of there with $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and they're able to do something really incredible with the money. If anyone's interested in joining, this is another women's only group. So if you're interested, just ask. You can find them on Facebook. I am not an organizer. I just go and attend and support. All right. I also just want to say thank you for being here. I know there are a lot of talks today, so I appreciate you choosing mine. And I also know that it's a long day, and I got the 4 o'clock spot. So I appreciate you for sticking it out and being here. Okay, so this is an icebreaker. I'm sure you all have used icebreakers, potentially done them with your teams, practiced them with your kids. I want you all to read this, think about it. We're not going to answer it yet, but be prepared towards the end to potentially answer this question. So if you could combine any 2 animals, which 2 would you pick, and which way would you have them? So think about like the head of one animal, the body of another animal, something like that. All right, think about that. Okay, so what I have up here are not new words, and I'm sorry, they're a little bit hard to read. But these aren't new words. We've all heard all of these topics before, right? We've heard of Agile software development. We've heard of synergy. Some people think that these are kind of cheesy words. They don't really mean anything. They don't hold any weight. So I wanted to actually take a step back and truly look at the definition of what these words are and what they mean. So Agile software development is a set of methodologies. They are centered around iterative development where requirements and solutions evolve through collaboration between self-organizing, cross-functional teams. We have all heard that before. That is from the dictionary. Like we've all heard it, right? The Dictionary of Information Technology, not Webster Dictionary. Don't look there. And then we have synergy. So synergy is a word that is often misused. People tend to imagine synergy as this giant woo-woo, exciting. It doesn't really mean anything. But synergy is truly just the working together of two or more parts where the combined effort is greater than the effectiveness of one single part alone. That's part of the reason I bring up Gehanna Glow. We bring our synergy to these nonprofits. We are each able to donate a small amount of $100, and they're able to leave there with thousands of dollars that truly changes their entire organization. So all of these buzzwords are thrown around all the time, right? We hear people say agile, agile delivery, agile this, let's synergize, let's synthesize, let's figure out how we can be a better team by using agile process. So when people start saying those things to you and you're hearing them constantly, remind them of these definitions and ask them, when you say synergy, is this what you're talking about? When you say synergy, are you committed to this team putting in their small amount of effort or their small pieces to actually get a bigger picture? If your manager or director or whoever looks at you and says, well, no, I actually want you to give 1,000,000% and them to give 1,000,000%, and then we'll be at 2,000,000%. Walk them back and explain to them that we each are part of this puzzle and we each can only give a certain amount to then come up with something larger. Before I open the next slide, I'm going to kind of transition into the 4 key Agile values. I think that it's really important for everybody to be reminded of these. Before I give it away and put everything up on the slide, is there anyone in here who can name just one of the 4 key Agile values? You don't have to give the definition or anything like that, just the actual value. Is anyone brave enough to try? No? Okay. Well, I'll show them to you, and then you can raise your hand. I'm just kidding. I'll read them to you. All right, so we have these 4 key Agile values up here. I'll take you back to 2001. That's where all of these values were created. It was actually 17 software engineers. So for all of you engineers in here who think you hate these, it was engineers who made these. Remember that. We just implement them. So you have a couple different things around the little pie chart, right? We have individuals and interaction over process and tools. So this one right here is truly focused on boosting communication between developers and the business. We care more about the individuals and the interactions than any process you're using, what tool you want to implement. The process and tools, they matter, but what really matters more is the individuals you're working with and the interaction you're having with them. As we go down, we have this working software over comprehensive documentation. I know we all have had managers who are saying things like, where did you document that? Where does that live? How did you do that? Where is the process? Is there a knowledge base? But at the end of the day, what the business wants is working software. We have to keep in mind that the end outcome is the focus. Continuing on to the orange over there, this is, actually, you know what? I'll go to the orange. So responding to change. So we want to respond to change over following a plan. A plan is important, right? And I think I have some coworkers in here. I see a few. We did this whole personality test the other day, and you figure out kind of what quadrant you fall into. And it was no surprise to myself or any of my coworkers that I very much fall in the expressive category. And one of the traits of an expressive is you just get started. You don't really care about the plan. We'll figure that out later, but we're just going to go, right? And that's exactly what this kind of ties to. We're going to respond to that change that you throw at us as a team versus following this step-by-step plan. The plan's important, and we'll adjust and we'll shift, but what we need to do is very quickly and rapidly respond to that change. It allows for more fluctuation, and it just kind of keeps things a little bit more simple when you're not as rigid. The top key value there is customer collaboration. This one right here, this is where we kind of look at that customer collaboration over any contract negotiation. So we want to make sure that our customer is informed through the entire process. We don't want to have any waste. If you're communicating with your customer the entire time, you are able to quickly remove things that just don't matter anymore. It also creates just a happier customer in the end. You haven't wasted their time, you haven't wasted their energy, you haven't developed anything that is useless to them. So keep in mind, in these key Agile principles, your top thing is a working product, talking to your customer, and always being able to change on the fly when needed. Okay, so now we're gonna go just like a step deeper, and I'm explaining all of these things to you so that you know why we want to kind of synergize more and create a better environment. So this list is going to look very exhaustive and cumbersome and long and just, there's a lot on there, right? It looks way worse on this giant screen. I swear it looked better when I was preparing. But these are the 12 Agile principles. So I'm not going to review each one of them. You can absolutely look them up. You can ask me questions about some of them if you have any, deeper questions. But just know there are 12, right? Is there anyone who can kind of glance at this and say to themselves, oh, my team, we always keep that in mind, or that one seems more important than others, or I really feel like we're kind of weak on one and not as strong on the other. Are there any that really resonate with anybody? So my favorite is actually number 10. And originally, when I learned about the 12 Agile principles, I had a hard time going through each one and figuring out what I felt was the most important. Because in my mind, you can't have two number ones. Although all of these are very important, I was like, there's got to be one that is just at the top, right? And I don't think they're in an order. I don't think that number 1, is the most important and number 12 is least important. But for me, number 10, it says simplicity is essential. I constantly have teams, my own teams and teams that I work with, who are over-solutioning, over-analyzing, getting caught in the problem and just going too far down that rabbit hole. So for me, taking a step back and reminding my teams that simplicity is essential is incredibly important. I'm allowed to teach them that taking these small, bite-sized chunks and just taking everything away, looking at one small thing, helps them focus a little bit better and start actually seeing a positive outcome. Okay, so what I have created here is going to be a slide of what developers think of all of the different Agile events and Agile ceremonies. I will tell you all, there is no truth to any of these facts on here. These are just my 10 plus years of knowledge in this space. These are direct quotes. Potentially some people in this room, if you're in this room and your quote is up here, come to me later and I'll give you your payment. So I want you all to see what developers that I have worked with think of each of these events. And maybe some of you can relate. All right, so daily stand-up. I'll have to read them because I don't know if you'll be able to see those. All right, so daily stand-up. Again, this is from developers' point of view. Don't go telling any of my mentors that I said this. So this is an early morning meeting every single day that lasts until forever, that wastes 15 minutes of my time, where I am forced to hear others on my team talk about nothing relevant to me, and where my Scrum Master just yells things about deliverables. That's pretty relatable in some cases, right? We've all been there. We've been to some bad stand-ups. We've had some bad Scrum Masters. It happens. All right, sprint planning, the bane of everyone's existence, right? So this is an incredibly long meeting every other week where our project manager, Scrum Master, product owner, insert any title there, manager, doesn't matter, organizes work for us that will inevitably change next week anyways, and this will all be a waste of time. We've all had that, right? If you haven't said it out loud, you've probably felt it at one point or another. All right, retros. I love retros, but I also am very outgoing type A. So I have had a lot of people on my teams who have absolutely said this to me. Retros are a place where my Scrum Master tries to make me play cutesy games, and we all complain about what went wrong the last sprint. I don't know why she needs to ask what went wrong when she was there the entire time. It happens. I ask it all the time, and I have had developers look directly at me and say, "Were you on PTO last week?" Nope, I was here. I was here. And then refinement, whether you do backlog refinement, product refinement, however you're doing refinement, it doesn't matter. This is just a generalization of refinement. Refinement is reading cards from the backlog together out loud, like we are back in 3rd grade, that others created, and putting fake story points to them that inevitably don't matter. I mean, it's true. I will tell you all, and I learned this from one of my mentors, that the person who created story points actually has come out and publicly apologized, saying that story points are useless, they make no sense, they provide no real value or level of effort, and there's no good correlation. So we can thank him for creating them, but he also hates them and does not use them anymore. So what I want to shift to now is the actual interpretation of each of these events, how we can incorporate them into teams, and how they will start providing synergy amongst developers, business, Scrum Masters, product owners. So we're going to look at the same exact list, but this is going to be from the other perspective. We have our daily stand-up again. So this daily stand-up is a space to align team efforts, identify and remove any barriers quickly. That's the key word, quickly. There are blockers and barriers all the time, but if I am meeting with you every single day and you are telling me where your issue is, we can 100% get that barrier removed very quickly. We're going to bring the team together to build stronger relationships. It's important to have that stand up at that same time and create that ritual so that you have a safe space where your team knows every single day they get to talk to each other. This is actually also a space where we're holding people accountable for their work and they're focused on the right work. I have went into stand-ups where I have people saying they're working on the same thing, and maybe we forgot a card, or maybe someone didn't assign themselves to a card, or whatever it may be. This daily stand-up helps hold us accountable. I know, and the team knows who's working on what, so that we are able to then go to them if there's an issue or if the customer is asking what's going on. All right, sprint planning. So really what sprint planning is supposed to be is a space where we set clear goals and priorities. This allows the entire team to be involved in the decision making. We are able to break down the work into manageable bite-sized pieces and proactively address risk. Sprint planning should be a space where you are allowed to push back and say, I don't think we have the capacity to do that this week. It should not be a space where a manager is coming in and just giving you a list of things to work on. This sprint planning space is supposed to be a team effort. It's supposed to be everybody working together and figuring out the best way to move forward. All right, retro. So this is an informal, bi-weekly event with no managers. So if you are struggling at any of your retros, kick your manager out, kick that leader out, kick the Scrum Master out if you have to. But this is a space where Vegas rules 100% apply. You're building trust with the team. You're sharing ownership of problems. And you're actually having open and honest communication to discuss different shortcomings. And my favorite part about retros is we're celebrating wins together. We're talking about small things, big things, happy things. We get to talk about anything and celebrate that as a team. All right, and then refinement. This should be a weekly process. It should happen week after week. And this is where you kind of just review, rank, edit your backlog items, and you fit your customers' needs based on your level of effort and what you think the effort is. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day if you pick a 1 or a 2 or a 8 or a 5. I would recommend that you don't make any story over 3 points and you try to keep everything 1, 2, or 3 points. But the idea is you're all aligned and you realize how much effort something is going to take. So I put together a list of tips and tricks. This is not all of the tips and tricks I have, but this is giving you tips and tricks on each of those ceremonies to be able to pull those teams together. So for daily stand-up, don't bring your computers. I know that sounds crazy in this tech space we live in, but if you don't bring your computers to stand up, you all meet up around your desks and you just talk about what's going on, it feels a little more casual. I am able to go into whatever collaboration tool I'm using and see what people are actually working on. But if I create a safe space for daily stand-up every day, hey, at 9 o'clock every morning, let's go meet by the coffee pot and we'll all grab a coffee together and we'll talk about what you're doing for the day. Gather in a cafeteria, gather in a neutral space. Don't feel like you're tied to a certain meeting room, a certain desk, a certain whatever. The time is important. You want to make sure you have the same time, but you are able to go to different places. Now, I would say be careful with adjusting that space every day. You do want consistency, but you could say, hey, for this sprint, we're going to go meet in the lunchroom. For next sprint, we're going to go meet at so-and-so's desk. Another thing that I like to do is start with a joke. I know that some people find it absolutely ridiculous, but it does make people laugh. It loosens up things. The joke takes 2 seconds. You're not wasting any time. One of my favorite things here that I recently learned from a mentor was letting everyone take turns owning stand-up. So I always imagined as the Scrum Master that I was in charge of every ceremony. I had to run it. I had to make sure people were talking. That was my burden to carry, right? But if you allow your teammates to own stand-up, they are starting their day knowing exactly what everyone's doing. It kind of forces this participation, these people to pay attention, right? So give it a try. The beauty of Agile is if it doesn't work, you just change. There's no repercussions. Hey, why don't you run stand-up today? If they do a terrible job or if the team didn't like it, great. Tomorrow, someone else will run it. All right, sprint planning. So in sprint planning, some ideas to create better team synergy are bringing actual sticky notes and a whiteboard. We all have so many tools we use, and sometimes just bringing a whiteboard, bringing sticky notes, and actually pasting all of our ideas or whatever we have to work on sticky notes gets people more excited and engaged. Some other things I have here are incorporating mind mapping or other visual aids. Some people are very much visual learners, so it's important to make sure we're kind of applying everything to everybody and making sure anyone can pay attention and follow. Another thing I have here, I could never do this with another team I had because we were all kind of all over the world, really. But try doing it over a lunch. Go take your team to get pizza or go to a coffee shop and have some coffee together while you plan. It allows for a more relaxed environment, and you have people who are more willing to work with you because you bought them pizza. You also should plan breaks into your agenda. Sprint planning can be really, really long sometimes. So allow every 30 minutes, every however long, let's stand up and walk around the table. Let's go to the restroom. Let's do 10 jumping jacks. It doesn't really matter what you're doing, but allow for those breaks. Make it okay. This is a space where we are creating a plan, but it's okay to take a break and walk around and talk or, talk about something not related to the sprint. And then one of my favorite things here, which one of the teams I support now does this really, really well, is this pre-sprint planning. We are able to meet with managers beforehand and make sure I'm able to have like a rough idea and list of what we think is going to be in the next sprint. It cuts down the sprint time by half. To be able to pre-plan and be ready, you're not wasting anyone's time. You're not wasting anyone's energy. You're able to come into this and be truly prepared and ready. All right, so for retro, some ideas I have here are using different themes, using different styles, using different games. It's actually really important every single retro you have to do it differently. If you do the same thing in the same retro every single week, nobody's going to want to participate. They're bored. They already know what people are going to say. Not much has changed in 2 weeks. It's a waste of their time. They're going to pretend they have something else going on and they're not going to show up. So allow them to feel like they're coming into a game. They get to play a game with you. There are some really great tools out there that will kind of gamify retro or turn it into more of an exciting space for everybody to be involved in. Another thing I have here is allowing for silence. So a lot of times I'll run a retro, and I'm sure we've all been there where, the Scrum Master says, okay, what's the wind in our sails this week? And the whole room is silent. And I originally would jump on it and say, oh, well, I think this. They're not really there to hear my opinion and what I think. That's a space for the developers and everybody who was working on that sprint to truly give feedback. Allow for that silence. Not everybody can react as quickly as you yourself can. It's okay to sit in that quiet and to honestly give them time to process and to think of something. Silence is not always a bad thing. And then make sure you have a culture of trust, which we'll come back to that, and we'll learn about some ways to create that trust in a second. And then finally, for refinement. So there are, again, all kinds of tools, right? You have Agile cards you can use that have different points on them. There are pointing poker tools, planning poker, tons of websites. I have developers who will create something for the team to use. It doesn't really matter. I have one team that just holds up fingers. It's whatever you want to do. But just creating that instead of everybody just saying a number out loud is already forcing that engagement. And it, again, is gamifying the system, right? It's allowing them to kind of play a game while we're doing refinement. Make sure in refinement you're asking clarifying questions so that every single person can pick up any of the tickets. When we prioritize a backlog, what's at the top should be picked up next. So I shouldn't have a developer that comes over and says, you know what, I actually want to work on that ticket that's 7 tickets deep. Every single developer should be able to come in and grab the top ticket. So the way to do that is in your refinement, ask the questions like, well, what do you mean when you said make it look good? What does good mean? Make sure it's very, very clear that your acceptance criteria is 100% defined, and make sure that everybody feels comfortable with that acceptance criteria. When people point, and you have one person over here who's saying, this is a 1, and then you have someone over here pointing at a 5, ask why. Don't allow that person who had a 1 to say, never mind, I meant a 5. Or the person who had a 5 say, whatever, I'm comfortable with the 1. Maybe we meet in the middle. Maybe we go with the 5. Again, the points don't really matter. It's like, whose line is it anyway? Like, the points are made up. The rules don't matter. The points are made up. It doesn't matter. What matters is that conversation that you have with those developers and getting everybody on that same page. Be open to breaking cards apart more. And then my favorite one here, don't allow managers to point. Don't let your manager, your app manager, your tech lead, anything like that, don't bring their points in. They can be an observer. They absolutely can come to refinement. They should be at refinement. But don't let them influence the developers, unless there are situations, right, where the manager is doing development work. But if it is truly a people manager or a tech lead who is not going to do the work on the card and hasn't done the work for quite some time, don't have them point. It's going to influence the way that the other people on the team are pointing. So-and-so pointed a 1, and they're my manager, so I guess I have to do that. Just ask them not to point. Or ask them to point silently and just kind of compare. Hey, okay, everybody else gave me theirs. Here's what they pointed at. You can do that comparison yourself, but don't let your developers, if you are a developer in here, don't get influenced by your manager. All right, so what I have here are a little bit out of the Agile ceremony space and more just into how else can we create a good team dynamic, right? So the number one thing here is the team building events. And every time I think about team building events or like company swag, anything like that, I just think about like all these memes that are going around now where they're like, wow, thank you for the water bottle with our company logo. I loved this more than a raise. So I get that these team building events can be a little bit like, oh, here we go again, another event. Like, I don't want a free dinner. I actually would like more PTO. So be mindful of team building events. But know that team building events do actually increase motivation. They build trust. They improve communication. They help, I guess I put trust on there twice. I really feel like team building can build trust. But they do increase morale. I encourage everyone to find a different activity that isn't just getting drinks or going to dinner. There are a lot of other things out there that you can do. So be mindful of that. But do know that team building events are important on your team. The next thing I have here is some paired programming. So this creates collective code ownership, improves code quality. It enhances learning and cross-functionality of the team. And this creates this slow down to speed up method. Let's slow down. Let's take a step back. Let's get everybody on the same page. And then you can speed up at the end and strengthen those relationships. So what we do on some of my teams are these weekly 30-minute dev connects where the dev can come in and talk about anything they want every Friday for 30 minutes. A lot of the time it is technical and it's something we're learning about at the time or a ticket we're working on, but it can truly be anything. And I think it's important to know that they are open and willing to talk. So applaud those people who step in and do those dev connects, but they truly do help the team. What we also do, we have a list on a team site, and it kind of creates a pairing. So you don't want the same people to constantly be working together and then building their own little duo over here against the team. So if you have a list of team members and a rotating list and kind of switching out the pairs, they're able to then get experience with everyone on the team. And then one of the other things I love is allowing, this is hard for some people, but allowing 2 developers to pick up 1 card. That doesn't mean that the entire sprint, they're all gonna be working on the same thing. But what that does is you can put a junior developer with a senior developer on the same card, and they get that exposure and that experience. You really do have to have approval from your management and your leadership team to do something like that, because it might mean that you do 1 or 2 less tickets. But again, we're slowing down so that we can speed up in 3 sprints from now. Now, because we took a step back and let so-and-so work on a more senior level card, they now have that knowledge. They have access to the right tools. I can't tell you how many times we go in to do something, and it's like, oh my gosh, you've never worked on that. You don't have access to that. Now we have to stop and get the access, and now we've wasted a day. So let people do that cross-training, work on things tandemly, and make sure they have all of that before they even get to that card. And then the last one here is connection. So learn personal facts about your team. Do they have kids? What's their favorite movie? Where they grew up? Hours they prefer working? And then remember those facts. It's really important to know that these people are humans. They're not just developers sitting here writing code. They're not machines. So learn them. I recently heard somebody tell me, I think they were in sales, I believe, but they talked about having a spreadsheet of everyone on their team. And what they did is anytime they learned a new fact about this person, they went into their little spreadsheet and put it on there, just jotted it down. What's their favorite color? What movie do they like? How many kids they have? When's their wedding anniversary? When you personify these people and give them actual meaning, it actually creates a better connection for yourself and for your teammates. So along this idea of collaboration and connection and team togetherness, there are tons of collaboration tools out there. I think we all are probably told what we have to use, right? You have Jira and Trello and ClickUp and ADO and all of them, right? It doesn't really matter what tool you use, but it is important that whatever tool you are using, you know very well. So take a LinkedIn Learning class, go to the library and read books on it, Google it, YouTube it, whatever you need to do. But know that collaboration tools create this open visual space where everybody can clearly see what's going on. There's transparency. There's nothing being missed. It's really important to make sure that if somebody is working on something, And my team hates this, but they'll mention something like, I don't see a card for that, so you must be doing that in your off hours. They're like, well, no, wait, I'm working on that during my 8 to 5. Okay, well, make a card. Make a card. You shouldn't be working on something if we didn't refine it, but we'll worry about that later. But make sure there's a card up there. So use a good collaboration tool and know that tool well when you use it. I was reading an article recently, and it actually says, because I put icebreakers up here, and I know everybody's like, what the heck, I don't want to do icebreakers. So teams that participate in icebreakers regularly, so not just like one time every couple months, regularly, actually increase production by 21%. That's a big amount of production. And it doesn't have anything to do with they work better, because we now know that they would pair a unicorn with a bunny. It has nothing to do with like what the actual icebreaker is. What it has to do with is the synergy and the trust they have among themselves. They've now opened up themselves to be a little bit more personable. And so they want to work with each other a little bit more. So team synergy and team connectedness is actually impacting our bottom and our top lines in our companies. So what does it even bring to teams, right? What's the point? So we have visibility. We can openly communicate now and not be afraid of what we say. Anyone can do anything on the team. There isn't any fear. There isn't any blocker, right? There's still going to be some silos of who's working on what. But for the most part, we've made everything very visible. You are able to then see in the backlog what's coming, and you can be like, well, I don't really know much about this topic, so I'm going to go and do some research on that. I am going to ask for my Dev Connect to be on that topic so I can be ready to pick up that card. We also have clear roles and responsibilities. Is there anyone in here who has ever had a job where you were not 100% sure what you were supposed to be doing? Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, does it? I have absolutely been in that position. So it's really important that you are very clear with your teams on what you are expecting of them. That's where we go back to that clear acceptance criteria, making sure the backlog is clear and visible. You want to have better resource management, increase productivity. And then my favorite, I think this word is on here like 100 times, but trust. Teams who rely on each other have more trust. More work is taken to completion when teams trust each other. Total iteration on projects and full buy-in, and honesty and job happiness. So there was an Oxford study of business that says when people are happy in their jobs, they are 13% more productive. So being happy isn't just, I like what I do. You have to have a visibility into your role. You have to know what your job is, and you have to trust your teammates. All right, so this next one, it's going to be so hard to read here. I'll read a couple of them. I'm not going to go through all of them. But I said earlier, I mentioned something about celebration is an important part of this process and creating good team synergy. So right here, I'm shamelessly celebrating some of my success and some of my wins on some of my teams. So let's see. Somebody told me once recently that I was managing WIP and minimizing it and making it work for the team, and that was a big win. I didn't think anything of it. I thought all I'm doing is taking your workload down, right? You're doing less. But they said to me, managing that made them happier. Let's see. She celebrates our big and small wins, and to those above us, making our work feel worthy. So because I could celebrate what they did, they felt like what they were doing was important. Let's see, we have this. As hesitant as I was to all the Agile ceremonies and the dreaded more meetings, Amanda has taught me to see value in each of them by describing their purpose and staying on track. So those Agile ceremonies we talked about in the beginning absolutely can be helpful, and you can get buy-in as long as you are doing them correctly. The team having a voice allowed us all to produce more work than we ever had. We are happy in our jobs, even when the job is challenging and the problems are vast, because we trust that Amanda will always find a way to center us to the most important task and make things seem not as big and daunting. That's not anything I have made up or created. It's because I use those Agile processes. I broke things down to 1 or 2 point cards. I kept a clear backlog. I wrote everything down. We had daily stand-up. We didn't cancel. We planned our sprint. It's not because I was doing their work for them. It's because I trusted and used the Agile process. I truly have ate my own dog food, and it is shown and continues to be proven that it's working, and my teams are happy. I'm not special. You all can absolutely do these things as well. So we have this lovely picture here, which is an Agilist's dream workspace, just like sticky notes everywhere, and you're just like moving them as you go. Like I can just picture myself like to do, doing, and done, just like my whole life is Kanban, like everything forever Kanban, always. But it really is, it doesn't matter if you use sticky notes or a whiteboard or a tool. Keeping things aligned and organized, and again, that transparency and visibility is really important. So when we integrate Agile practices correctly, I want to be very clear. You can't just integrate Agile practices and throw them at your teams and force them to show up for 15 minutes and force them to do a retro. Do them correctly. Your teams will create a collaborative culture that enhances visibility, trust, and overall synergy, which will then, in turn, boost productivity. All right, so now I'm going to come back to kind of tie things up, because we didn't have time to do our icebreaker in the beginning. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite icebreakers is not actually this one. It's another one, which is going to be too hard for this group. But what you do, you guys can all go back to work on Monday and use this. Ask your team to write their name down backwards. So their first name and their last name, flip it and write it backwards. And then call each other that name all day. So flip it and reverse it, right? And then call your team that all day. Now your team has this fun little silly inside joke, and you see people in the hallways and you're calling them by their backwards name, and everybody's like, what on earth, why are you saying that? Like, that's not their name, what are you doing? But it is a fun way to just get the team excited and trusting each other. You have your own little club, right? Like you get to just be together. And that small amount of trust then allows them to go back and go into retro and say to you, hey, I really think when we took on this project, it was probably too big, or I really didn't like how our manager came to us and forced us to do this project. I wish that we would have had more say. Those aren't things that people are going to say to you without that trust. So do fun little icebreakers like that. There are tons. You can go to tastycupcakes.com. And there are tons of games and fun and all of it. You can Google icebreakers. You can do whatever you need to do. Anyways, do I have anyone brave enough to tell me what two animals they would combine and in what order? Yeah. A panda and a dog. Which would be, what would be the head?
Actually, what I really like is the body of the panda and the temperament of a nice dog.
Oh, okay. Body of a panda and temperament of a dog. I love that. Anybody else want to share one? Did you have one? Body of an eagle and head of a zebra. Beautiful. I just imagine this like giant, like, don't zebras have like really big teeth? Yeah, just giant teeth flying through the sky. See, but do you see how just that one question, I'm going to see you all the time and think of a giant zebra head. Like, this is great. We're friends now. You trust me. Like, it's silly things like that, right? That was the only reason for bringing this up, was just to show you all that I don't even know your name, but I now know what two animals you're going to combine, and that's something special, right? Now we could probably get off to a better start. We're going to have a better working agreement around something as silly as that question. There are also a lot of tools online, games. You can play code names for free online. I highly recommend that. It is so fun. Your teams could mess up terribly, but playing code names together online is just the silliest thing. I definitely think everybody should give that a try. All right, so before I run out of time, I want to say thank you again to all of you. I really appreciate it. This QR code actually just takes you to my LinkedIn, so you can add me there. If you have any questions about any of this talk. If you want me to send you the talk, I definitely can. If you want to chat about Get With It or WitCon or anything like that, please let me know. And thank you all for being here. I hope you had a great time.